Test? Perfect. All right, I would like to start with any questions from the audience for our speakers, and then we'll move on to the virtual audience.
Now we're good.
All right. Any from the speakers here on stage, any comments on each other's presentations, anything that really stood out to you that you'd like to comment on before we continue to questions?
Is this on? Yeah. I just love the fact that we had no idea what presentations and we both had the hype cycle on it. I thought that was not ironic, but yeah, like coincidental that a lot of these messages, no matter where you are in the world, are aligning. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I agree. So one question that actually came in for you, Nathan, was how do you effectively teach digital competency to a diverse group of AEC stakeholders?
I think a great example of just my own inability as a general contractor perspective to communicate to architects, engineers, and that struggle, and that it's okay to not always say the right words, but to struggle through the meaning and to find the right intentions. I think too often we want to jump to conclusions as within our different silos of AE and C and solve this problem, but then we realize we've just solved it in a vacuum and haven't actually really solved the problem. And so I think that's, in all the years of going through these conversations, kind of my larger realization, larger message to the industry is we do have to actually take the time and have these slower, higher level strategic conversations to get that alignment that will then make all these much tougher, well, I guess more complicated conversations around data science and what taxonomy we should use and all the very interesting stuff, but make sure that it starts with the right common why.
Great, thank you. Any follow-up questions from the audience here?
Look, I'll add just adding a chunk on that as well. I'm an academic. It's like what I do. So teaching is what I do. And I do have a diverse range of people I teach to, ranging from quantity surveyors to interior designers to civil engineers. And for a lot of the work that needs to be done is to, first of all, find that baseline, where there is sort of some level of common understanding. If you can find where that baseline is, then teaching any particular topic becomes a little bit easier. But that context is vital. And when you're talking to certain sections of the AEC community, you have to be very careful that you are giving them examples which are relevant to them. And when you start stepping away from that relevance, you're going to struggle. And I suppose the job of a teacher, anyone providing training, is, you know what, I listened to a TED Talk once about a guy whose name I can't remember, but he really did like the word teacher in particular. And the point that he made was that you could have Mary, in the classroom teaching, but it's altogether possible that no one in the room is learning anything. So although she's engaged in the activity, nothing is actually happening. And I think as a teacher, you have to realize that. And the teaching, training, there isn't. It's a nuanced difference. So I think that's it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've heard some feedback recently as well on the term training versus learning. A lot of people just don't like those terms, so I agree with you there.
Not to disagree with you, but we're here for a debate.
Oh, that looks like a disagreement.
In our work, we're dealing mostly with industry. And the first thing we need to do, and the first thing we do, say, today I was meeting Bernardo from Dolman, is to understand their need. Not to take an off-the-shelf package and design then training, not teaching, training, because you're going to go out in the workforce, to meet need. And then measure that training that is not just task-based, but it has impact. So you qualify the task and you quantify the impact. So you're delivering to meet need. And that's some of the challenges that was in the last presentation there, how we engage companies in training. They see investment in time, investment in money, and they don't always see the return on investment because it's too long of a continuum. So you've got to break it down into the shorter bite size, chunk it down into the micro modules, so the return on investment is measurable within the time frame.
Yeah, I would agree. That's super important. Paul, since you answered the last, or you made the last comment, there's a question that came in online, too, that said, how can digitalization improve pathways to learning, especially for BIM?
If we look at the presentations we've given by my fellow presenters and the one on virtually online, digitalization is a pathway. So every learner has a different pathway to the goal that they need. And we use the tools within digitalization to give people, to let them navigate their own learning pathway. Everybody's different, everybody's unique. The mistakes we've made in education down through the years are classes of 20, classes of 30, classes of 35, all been taught the same syllabus, at the same speed, and expecting the same results. Everybody's individual. Treat people as individuals, especially when you're upskilling. Let them set the pace, set the journey, set the destination, and give them that opportunity.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
I've got to
Paul.
jump in. One of the things that I mean, third level, now there's always this kind of, I suppose, almost a battle between efficiency and effectiveness. And, you know, when we look at the traditional university education, 200 people in a room being talked to by one individual, that's really efficient. And I think we need to recognize that. Not necessarily effective. And I think that's where there's a lot of work still to be done. Digitalization is definitely one of the mechanisms, and I mean what Paul's talking about here, those notions of micro-credentials, tailored to specific individuals in order to meet their specific needs. That, to my mind, is the future of education. But the real problems start, creeping in when you start dealing with, large volumes of people, when it's not always easy to do that. And in addition to that, we also have a secondary systems behind us in the form of professional bodies who, in many cases, will accredit degrees and things like that. They have very regimented things that they want to see done and in place. So at one level, there is a degree of customization possible in education, but there is also these other bodies that you need to be cognizant of at the same time.
Just real quick on that point of efficiency and effectiveness, so flipped classroom concept, right? I think the same point of one person lecturing to 200, why not just watch a video of that lecture at that point, and then the time that they are in a classroom, spend more time actively engaging so that you can actually ask and answer questions. So, I mean, we're seeing that at the elementary school and moving its way up, but my question is, at the industry level, can we take a lot of those same concepts of what is the training that's best done virtually and through a lot of these LMS systems, and what stuff is best done from that to then apply that and have the teachers there or educators or whatever the right word is now to use for the role that they play, right? Because it could be mentor, it could be coach, could be a lot of different things where the learning can actually be more self-paced and they're really there just helping them along the way. So yeah, I think totally rethinking what is the different roles of education is a great place to start.
Following up and exactly reinforcing what you said, Paul, digitalization is not the panacea for the skills shortages or for the skills needs. It's there to assist education and the two to work in harmony. It's not a silver bullet, but it's there to work with the current, because current traditional skilling and upskilling isn't meeting some need. It will meet some, but digitalization will help close that gap, and it's how we get the two together in a hybrid model and work to that. We've learned lessons coming through COVID, exactly as you said there. Putting videos up isn't good enough. It's got to be that interactive. You got to get into that, what we use, the gamification, to get the learner to engage. You can all read books from now to the cows come home or watch videos, but unless you engage, you're not taking anything meaningful from it. So therefore, it's not one size fits all. We've got to get to the hybrid model that suits exactly what was taught there in the Pinnacle video, where the need is, and identify the need and meet that need.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'd like to open it up to the audience. We've had some questions virtually. Any follow-up questions from any members here in the audience with us? Yeah?
Mike behind you there.
So I have one for Paul about artificial intelligence. I'd like to understand better where we are. Are we far from having artificial intelligence really modeling for us in construction? So you showed us a little flask that was developed by an artificial intelligence, and the artificial intelligence forgot one of the doors. But I know professional designers that would maybe forgot all the doors. So maybe we're not that far from it. I'm not expecting a number, but I'd like to know what you think about it.
I'm going to straight back to opinions, not answers. But in relation to that, there's a lot of crystal balls in it. We are a good distance away from that kind of thing. It's not going to be a journey that takes us to an AI producing floor plans and AI producing designs. What is going to happen first, as far as I can see, is you're going to have AIs doing a lot of the error checking. Now, when it comes to any of this kind of stuff, it's really important that we let computers do things that computers are really good at. And computers are really good at the boring and the mundane. And when it comes right down to it, I mean, when you're checking for all of the various components that's supposed to go into a particular area, all of those types of laborious, let's face it, low skill kind of stuff, that's where you start putting machines into it. And of course, when you do that, you free up architects, designers to do what they're really good at, which is that conceptualization to realization. So I think we've got a way to go there. There has been some various degrees of success. So I think Autodesk's head office, there's chunks of that building which was designed by a GA. And it was just basically fed a bunch of information in terms of proximity. So people have to be within X distance to a canteen facility, toilet facilities, meeting rooms. There should be levels of privacy and all that kind of stuff. And there was a lot of that optioneering was being taken care of through GAs. And that got deployed. So I think at the moment what we see in real time, like now, is we're seeing the optioneering being done through those types of algorithms. Full-on endgame building end-to-end. I think I don't know, somebody's really got to put their head into it. That said, this is one everyone all comes back to at the end of the day, if you were to say to somebody, 25 years ago that you would be able to hold a device in your hand which will show you satellite images and map you from any place in the earth to another place in the earth, they'd say no. Where are you going to get the device, and who is going to have a data set big enough that is going to contain all of that street information on the entire planet? The reality is we have Google Maps. So it depends on who wants to do it.
But to bring that another step further, AI can design anything they want or to the best capability. What we currently have in the workplace is the gap between as designed and as built. And that's where the inefficiencies come in, that gap. And not to mention the word too much, as in the London Underground, mind the gap. And that's what we need to do. And that's where the human interface comes in. And also then technology comes in to keep that continual checking. Our biggest challenge currently in the construction industry, reduce the carbon footprint of construction. We can design all the carbon-saving techniques we need, but unless they're built in, monitored and maintained and managed, your gap is still there. And that's where AI really comes in, is the proof checking and the reverse chain checking all the time. And that's where the benefits will come. But the worker in the field needs the skills to be able to implement what was designed.
Just real quick on that. Say what you were going to say. Say your thing.
I was going to say thank you only.
Oh.
So please go ahead.
Okay, so the one thing I will add is measurements, right? I mean, so we've got aligned people that want the AI. We've got technology that is certainly capable of it. But the question is, what rules are you validating it on? When it's a BIM object, or when there are so many questions that go into, yes, we can, but do we know how we want to measure it by? And that's where it becomes a lot trickier. And those are things we have to figure out. But what's cool is, yeah, the technology is there when we have those answers. Mm-hmm. It's just getting those answers that I think is the more challenging part.
An article I wrote for the BIM Coordinators magazine. What is it that we cannot see? And it's the use of data. Exactly as you said there. The data is there. If we don't measure it, we can't use it. And that's where we can really measure with the stuff you're talking about there, Paul. And once you measure it, then you set the benchmarks, you set the standards, so you have something to measure it against. So therefore you have a line you can start improving from. And it's that data we need, because if we fail to measure, we're going to fail.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's where I'd like to wrap it up for today. If there's any last comments from our speakers here.
Drop that mic. That was great. That was a good ending.
All right. Well, I would like to thank you here for joining us and coming all the way to Dublin. And everybody joining us virtually as well. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for joining us. And here's to the BIM Coordinators Summit 2022, and here's to 2023. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.